quite literally, this is what this is, boys and girls, a tone-deaf Marvel star. Because Marvel star Anthony Mackie bizarrely claims the MCU is limited by comic book canon. There's only so much creativity you can bring to the tale because Stan Lee gave us so much content. So wait, you're complaining that there's a million different stories to tell with a million different variations and Elseworld stories and multiple dimensions and multiple timelines and Batman through the ages and all this other stuff and all of that. The over 100 years, over 100 years of comic book lore. Well, almost 100 years because we're almost coming up on Superman's 100-year mark. But over 100 years of comic book lore. And you think that limits you? Why? Because you can't just rip these characters out of their stories, out of who they've always been, who the fans always know, who have always known them to be, and just do whatever for them? Just make them Captain America in name only, like some little puppet on a string? Make it like Falcon in name only as some little puppet on a string? Like, this is the kind of this is insanity. This is stuff that is said by people who have never read a comic book in their life or literally know nothing of the history of comic books. You can even not read a comic book. And just from a historical perspective, from a literature historical perspective, you would know how much backstory you have, how much lore you have to go through. So in one of the most bizarre and head-scratching statements possibly ever uttered in relation to the franchise, Captain America Brave New World star Anthony Mackie has claimed that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is limited in how creative it can be because Stan Lee only gave us so much content. Only so much content? We're talking, just if you want to talk about Stan Lee, 40 years of just Stan Lee Presents content, right? You've got legit Marvel content going, all the way back to the 40s, 50s, right? So you're talking, we're looking at 80, 60, 80 years. You go back to DC with Batman and Superman, you're going almost 100 years now. Like I said, this is one of those guys that literally knows nothing about the comic book industry. This guy is a moron normie, and this is what happens when you don't force your actors and actresses to get an education on the roles and the characters they will be representing. Oh, well, they don't want you to do that because they want to do it their own way. Oh, but Anthony Mackie's saying it's so limited. The man behind the MCU's live-action incarnation of the Falcon offered his take on the franchise's creative potential while speaking to the UK entertainment news outlet RadioTimes.com in promotion of the local premiere of the Twisted Metal live-action television series, which I hear nothing but good things about. As per the outlet's Rob Lean, with his time adapting Marvel's Sam Wilson to the silver screen and prepared him for his work bringing the Sony video game to the life, Mackie asserted, "I would say the Marvel thing is completely different, just because it's such a space of controlled entertainment. Like, there's only so much you can do. There's only so much creativity you can bring to the table because Stan Lee gave us so much content." Yeah, so much to work with. A million different storylines to tell. A million different struggles to tell. A million different evolutions and growing up and maturing of characters. Yes, and that makes you limited? Whereas the Twisted Metal, it was like, there's a guy and a girl, go! So we were really able to build that world around it. Oh, so it was a video game with a limited amount of storyline so you could fill in all the gaps for yourself. Okay, I still don't get this. Met by his host's subsequent speculation that Twisted Metal's franchise lack of an intricate story allowed for the story's production team to be more easily take liberties with the source material, compared to Marvel, the actor explained exactly. And that's the hard thing about the Marvel universe. It's like you can't really go outside of the lines of those comic books. What's wrong with that? You've got plenty of it. When we introduced the Falcon and growth of the Falcon to Captain America, all of that had to concede with what Stan had already given us. So it's an interesting juggle to be part of a world, and that this was more like, let's just have fun and figure it out as we go. And I can understand where he's coming from on that one, but it really doesn't make all that much sense, at least is kind of baffling. As most readers may have yelled at their screen by now, given what the audiences have seen from the MCU over its thus 16-year run, Mackie's comments are, to say the least, absolutely baffling. While an argument could be made that the franchise's Phase 1 was trying its damnedest to stay accurate to its source material, for example, Obadiah Shane's story in the first Iron Man films plays out pretty damn close to how it does in the original comic books, as soon as Phase 2 kicked off, that was no longer the case. Absolute facts. For some brief examples of Marvel's change in design philosophy, look no further than the fact that such elements as Trevor Slattery, having spent a significant time impersonating the Mandarin, Darren Cross has taken up the identity of Yellow Jacket, and the entirety of the Guardians of the Galaxy's depiction representation significant deviations from their original comic book forms. And that's something that Ripper brought up a whole bunch, was literally, that's the thing. It was literally nothing but that. That was not like the original characters. That was not the Guardians of the Galaxy from the comic books in any way, shape, or form. And now they've actually changed the Guardians of the Galaxy characters in the comic books to reflect the movies more, because obviously how successful those movies put out there. So at current, Mackie's next MCU appearance, Captain America Brave New World, is currently set to glide, or if rumors of its abysmal test screening told true, crashing into theaters on February 14th, 2025. So let me know what you guys think about this. What do you guys think about this out there in the chat? What do you guys think about this in the comments? What is this kind of situation going on? Because I think this is just dumb. I think this is just one of those situations, like, I can kind of understand where he's coming from, as far as like Twisted Metal being a little more open-ended, a little more loose. He can kind of actually, they can kind of do whatever they want, because there's not like a direct storyline where you obviously have hundreds, if not thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of different storylines all throughout Marvel that you can pick. But like the article pointed out, there's been a lot of massive amounts of deviations from Disney Marvel as far as what they've been doing to the characters. I mean, I don't think Spider-Man was ever Spider-Man in the MCU up until maybe the very last moments of No Way Home. That was literally Iron Boy the entire time. That was never Peter Parker's Spider-Man. That was never the boy genius who created all of his own tech. No, all that was Tony Stark's sidekick. So I always had a real issue with that. What they've done to Wanda has just been an absolute abomination in every way, shape, or form. It's just been nothing but rotten stuff over the last couple. There's been some really good movies in the last couple of phases, in phase 2 and 3, don't get me wrong. But at the exact same time, there are major deviations from these characters. So for him to come out there and say this clearly shows one of two things. He's either gaslighting because he's trying to promote the new stuff and try to downplay his old stuff, or more than likely, he's simply ignorant of the entire massive amount of backstory and backlog that is within the Marvel universe that not only Stan Lee created, but so many other incredible creators contributed to over the years, whether it be Jim Lee or many of the others out there. It's just been absolute insanity. So for the fact that this guy comes out there and says this just shows his ignorance. And by all means, if any of you comic book fans want to go out there and roast this guy for saying some nonsense like this, clearly being ignorant of any of his comic book history, by all means, have at it, because Anthony Mackie is definitely showing his ass and his ignorance when it comes to all things Marvel comic books and how expansive those storylines really are.